Well, as the slides now suggest, we shall get started. My name is Phil Underwood. I'm the Engagement Manager at the Society for the Environment. I've got the simple job of introducing the webinar, then I'll hand over to our chair for this webinar, followed by our two expert speakers. For those watching this webinar as a recording, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me using the contact details on your screen at the moment, and I'll see if I can find the answers to those. So just a very brief introduction to who the Society for the Environment are, because I'm aware that there are many people who are attending today who aren't chartered environmentalists or registered environmental technicians. So the Society for the Environment holds a Royal Charter, which was awarded in 2004. We are the custodian of two professional registrations, the Chartered Environmentalist Registration, or CENV, and the Registered Environmental Technician Registration, or REnvTech. The Society operates as an umbrella organisation, currently with 25 professional bodies as constituent bodies, which are on your screen at the moment. All of these bodies currently hold a licence to award the Chartered Environmentalist Registration to their members. So you would go through one of these professional bodies to apply to become a Chartered Environmentalist. 3 of these are currently able to offer the Registered Environmental Technician Registration as well, and they have just been highlighted on your screen just now. A total of just over 7,400 worldwide of chartered environmentalists and registered environmental technicians. That's the total number at the moment. So that's enough about the Society for the Environment. This is the first of our expert-led series of webinars. These new series will provide expert insights and perspectives from across the sectors and disciplines that our CENVs and REnvTechs cover to increase knowledge transfer opportunities. This 3-part webinar series is based around the topic of waste reduction, and this is the final webinar of this series. The series has consisted of 2 expert speakers sharing their knowledge and good practice case studies on each webinar, so 6 experts in total, and the last 2 will be today. For this webinar, we're delighted to have a chair who will be running proceedings today. Therefore, I'd like to introduce Dougal Driver, who is a chartered environmentalist, chartered forester, chartered surveyor, as well as a fellow of RICS. He is the CEO of Grown in Britain and vice chair of the Society for the Environment. So, welcome, Dougal. It's over to you now to conduct the webinar from here.
Thank you very much, Phil, and hello to everybody. Welcome to the 3rd part of our waste reduction webinar series. It falls exactly 6 months after the last World Environment Day, and not surprisingly, that's 6 months from the next one on the 5th of June 2019. As Phil has suggested, and you may well know, but I'll reiterate the format of today. I'll shortly be handing over to our first chartered environmentalist speaker, Dr. Adam Reed, to start off the 2 talks, and then we'll move across to Martin Gettings. There'll be plenty of time, hopefully, for speakers at the end, with Adam and Martin expediting their talks. So please use the facilities through the webinar to get those questions in so that we can see what they are as we go. Makes life easier and more efficient. And just to reiterate that I can assure you from a sort of Society of the Environment perspective with my vice chair hat on, this series really does mean a lot. It's a great way for us to engage, and it brings forward expertise that we have in buckets across our chartered environmentalist cadre, and it's a great way to keep that available for all as well. And the link to the World Environment Day, the Society is a champion for World Environment Day in this country. I've been leading the charge to get hold of it over the last couple of years on behalf of the Society and our constituent bodies, and of course all those interested in the environment. It's a global UN initiative, and it is obviously annual, and we back it, and we encourage everybody to get involved. We think it could grow and grow as a great platform for debating the issues that we need to air. We believe, obviously, as we all do, it's more than one day. We want to continue the conversation and increase awareness of the issues throughout the year. Hence, these expert-led webinars. And the theme for last year's, this current year, World Environment Day 2018 was Beat Plastic Pollution. Very topical and very lively, of course. And we continue this theme in this webinar series, but we also expand it to also focus on other waste problems that perhaps escape media headlines. So let's moving on to our speakers. That's enough from me. Dr. Adam Reed. Both our speakers, Adam and Martin, will provide insights into waste reduction. And Adam is a chartered environmentalist via CIWEM, the Chartered Institution of Waste Management, and is Director of External Affairs at Suez Recycling and Recovery UK Limited. Adam spends a lot of his time addressing the Chinese recycling import situation, rather you than me, Adam, and he works a lot with DEFRA and BEES, particularly on the upcoming new resource and waste strategy. He will provide his insight into the future of plastic wastes, a new consumerism, and the opportunity for effective producer responsibility. Adam, thanks for joining the webinar and contributing and talking, and over to you.
Google. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my first SOC ENV webinar, and I was at a committee meeting just earlier in the week, meeting colleagues from other disciplines, and I think waste and plastics in particular sits beautifully across so many of our discipline areas right now. I've been set a daunting task, 20 minutes maximum, to tell you about consumerism, to talk to you about the future of plastics, in particular plastic wastes, and to talk about what's likely to happen with the new resources and waste plan that DEFRA are putting the final touches to right now in terms of effective producer responsibility. These three themes are very interrelated and are going to change the landscape beyond recognition. Everybody loves to know who's speaking, don't they? So all I will say is the slides will be available afterwards, as they are always, so you can download. There's a lot more detail on the PDF version than there will be in the presentation, but I've been around the block, unfortunately. My hair fell out a long time ago, and I talk all things rubbish. My career started by using the Wombles to communicate to children the benefit of recycling. And some 25 years later, I'm still talking about the value of the Wombles, albeit I'm now telling Michael Gove about the value of the Wombles. So I haven't come a long way, but ex-local authority, long-term consultant, and now working in the private sector with Suez. And what's interesting working with a company like Suez is I get to collect rubbish, I get to process rubbish, I get to produce product that ends up going back into the system. We deal with consumers, but equally we deal with big brands, and it's given me great insight into the problems of waste, but also some of the potential opportunities. So let's see where I get to. A little bit of scene setting as I'm first up today. Packaging is not evil. There we go. Who'd thought a waste manager would say that? But without good packaging, we get unprotected products, we get restricted product life, and we end up with a lot more waste. So plastic is not evil, as some campaign groups may tell you, but poor usage of plastic and inability to put it in the right place at the right time does create longer term problems, because plastic is one of those products that just hangs around. It's designed for long life. And that means if it creeps into the environment, we've got a problem on our hands. Some numbers on the screen. Again, I won't bore you with the detail, but plastic packaging is very prevalent in our bin, in our life, in our behaviors, and we just don't capture enough of it, although progress is being made year on year in terms of how much plastic bottle we can collect, because that is a readily recyclable, easy to access item. But it's not if it's on the go. If you're on the tube, if you're on the train, if you're out at a shopping centre, how easy is it for you to recycle that? Are you taking it home with you? Is that your commitment to the environment? I think that's one of the challenges we face with an easily recyclable item like a plastic bottle. That's one thing, but are you going to take your contaminated pots, tubs and trays home when you've been eating them on the street with a bit of chicken chow mein perhaps in between meetings, and you've got a bit of noodles left over? What are you going to do with that kind of container? How do we capture it? So plastic is all about supporting modern lifestyles, and modern lifestyles are inherently difficult to engage in the world of recycling, because you're on the go, time is money, everything is fast paced, and yet that means contamination. So this is an interesting one. Everybody tells me that plastic recycling bottles are 50% recycled. Well, maybe they are, but the total amount of plastic in the UK economy, the best guess we can get by all the analysis that we've done, is that you're looking at just under 19% recycling rates. That really isn't very good. And that's because there's a lot of leakage from our system. Leakage on the street, leakage from our curbside collections, leakage at our treatment and processing facilities. None of them are perfect. And when you start, adding imperfection to imperfection, we start to create a problem, which is plastics in the environment. So what is the future of plastic waste? What's happening in this landscape that I've spent most of my time living in? Now, I'm a fan of Costa Coffee. I'm a man without an office in London many days, and so I frequent coffee shops in most London boroughs in most given weeks, and I can tell you there's an awful lot of interest going on out there about coffee cup recycling. But let's get back to plastic specifically. Rapidly changing landscape. And nobody wants to see an image like this, whether it's Blue Planet or whether it's illegal dumping or it's kids living on dump sites. This is not the future of recycling, particularly for plastic that we would all want to buy into. And yet this is prevalent in much of the world. So we've got a long way to go. And this may not be solely because of UK consumers. But with so much of our plastic having historically gone overseas to the likes of China and now moving to the likes of Malaysia, Indonesia and Vietnam, we have a problem because their systems are not designed to cope with the mixed, often low-grade plastic that we collect, because our job has been to collect it cheap and move it quickly. And now we're moving to a future that says quality is important and we want UK processing. So there's a massive change coming. This is not a future we want to buy into. But I'm not sure that the plastic-free aisle of the supermarket is necessarily the answer to all our problems. This has got a lot of press some 6 months ago, and there's a number of supermarkets that are now considering something similar. But is this what we as consumers actually want? And is this really plastic-free? Because if you look at all of that packaging on the right-hand side, I would argue that there's an awful lot of plastic there. It might be a biopolymer, starch, mixture of both, but I don't think it's truly plastic free. And equally, what's a consumer going to do going in? I know what my mum and my gran are going to do. They're just not going to go down that aisle because it's got none of the products that they recognize. So we've got to recognize that a knee-jerk reaction to a world without plastic is probably not the solution. And you've got the likes of Iceland committing to eliminate plastic packaging from their own brands. You've got Morrison's going plastic free on their fruit and veg, for example. The encouragement of Tupperware, and some of us are just about old enough to remember Tupperware, taking them down to the supermarket and fill your own. Now, this is all really good, but it's actually really a small ripple in a very big ocean. And there's no guarantee that any of these are going to change the overall consumer market when it comes to the big brands that we're buying day in, day out. So this is great first step, but we've got more progress that's needed. And there's other things that are shaping the market we live in, because it's not always just about the supermarket or the on-the-go consumption between meetings. You've got some big brands that are now living what I would call very different sustainable lifestyles. They capture their own residues and their own recyclables. They bring them back to store or back of store. They're offering you a service as opposed to a product. I think this is a really interesting modern engagement space. And if you ask the generation that follows mine, and the one that my son in effect will be part of, I think the world of eBay and Milkman, for example, may well be the kind of core provision of a future where we consume differently, and therefore the access to recycling to take back into the system may be a very different space as well. So I think these are really starting to shape the space we live in. But we're also seeing some really interesting brands doing really interesting things. Now, whether you're a fan of Co-op or Lidl, that's up to you. But are Walkers, are they somebody you want to buy into? I think it's fascinating that we're now going to have post-back Walkers crisp packets going back to through TerraCycle, which we're one of the major shareholders of in Europe, and we're now processing them. But you need something like 300,000 crisp packets to get a ton of material for processing. So again, this is all a little bit niche at the moment. This is not the mainstream solution. So maybe switching materials is the answer. I've been challenged a few times recently. Why don't we go back to Corona glass bottles? They were eminently recyclable in the 70s, and we got a take back, a 50p or a 5p or whatever it might have been down at the newsagent. Well, maybe, but they were heavy, they broke, there was a limited lifetime. And the thing about plastic is it's cheap and it's light and it's quick. So are we going to move to aluminium? I've seen there's quite a bit of social media interest around aluminium cans at the moment, and whether or not buying water in an aluminium can with a resealable top is the answer. I don't know is the question. I'm yet to see the evidence that suggests there's going to be a massive swing in this direction. But I love the fact that we're challenging the norms here. You know, how quickly could aluminium become, you know, the new plastic bottle for many of the drinks that we consume on the go? And we know that aluminium is readily capturable and recyclable in many traditional ways. So that could be quite a step change. And then we hear a lot about biopolymers, and this is actually something that quite upsets me because it's really confusing. Now, is your biopolymer in your new bottle going to be compostable in air, or degradable in the absence of air? Is it going to be a temperature controlled degradation? Is it going to be a moisture controlled degradation? Is it going to be light controlled degradation? How do you actually tell your consumer, general public, my gran, what she should do with her leftover tubs and pots if it's a biopolymer? Does it go in the compost bin? Does it go in the food waste bin? Because they're different. One goes to a compost facility, one goes to an AD plant. You know, is it going in your residual bin because we're going to burn it? Moving into biopolymers is a particularly difficult area unless we've got clarity on what we want to see going forward in terms of the right type of plastic, you know, future plastic container. And then, you know, we've already heard Scotland's, you know, very keen on DRS, deposit return systems. You know, they've had their consultation already and are looking to implement something within the next 2 years. England will be consulting over Christmas on the first stage of their approach to DRS. I think there's two very different schools of thought. DRS in England looks to be favouring on the go, shopping centres, major office blocks, transport hubs. In Scotland, they're looking to do everything and a wider mix of materials. So all of these things are going to change potentially the materials that are on the market and therefore how we capture them to put them back to secondary use. So let's move on to this art of consumerism, if you like. You know, the Blue Planet effect, it would be amiss of me as an environmentalist to not mention Blue Planet and, you know, fabulous capturing of the public mindset, but also huge impact on politicians. And I think actually we shouldn't underestimate the impact this has had on certain Michael Gove. So with that in mind, the time is right for a change, but we're still doing this in a time of austerity where budgets are tight throughout the systems that operate. A recent Viridor survey, I don't mind mentioning one of our competitors in this space, I thought it was a very interesting survey. 82% of the public are worried about plastics in the ocean, and rightly so. If you'd have asked that 18 months ago, I reckon that figure would have been under a third because it didn't get the media coverage. Now, all over the media coverage. 71% think it's likely there'll be floating islands of rubbish. Well, there are floating islands of rubbish, and the question is, you know, when will they be somewhere that we can see from our cruise ships when we're on holiday? And if you look at the perceived most polluting household items, plastic wrapping, far left, is the one that's got the highest rating. But look at the ones that have changed the most, the ones in the red block. Plastic straws and cotton buds have had a rapid increase, and that's because they've been getting a lot of media attention as unnecessary. Now, you know, wherever you go, whichever authority you live in, wherever you go on holiday, wherever you shop, wherever you work, there will be a different appreciation and perception of what is recyclable in this plastic space. Toothpaste tube, the pill pack, the bubble wrap. I can't actually give you a black and white answer. And that's what's really interesting. In certain places, we collect them. In some places, we process them, but not everywhere. And that's partly to do with our clients, and it's partly to do with the market demand for that material. Black and coloured plastics don't have a lot of market opportunity because they've already been dyed, they've already been treated. Ultimately, you're downcycling rather than upcycling. There is a limit to their lifetime. But the public want to do more. And interestingly, we ran a series of public workshops about 3 months ago. And we stripped out all of the environmentalists, and this became Joe and Josephine public. You know, they were screened. And what's really interesting is that within about 10 minutes of having a conversation about the way that the world of waste management works, they got onto the fact that producers clearly aren't doing enough to get material out of the bin. So the public are now crying quite openly for producer responsibility. Producers should do more. Producers should prioritise long-lasting, durable products, more repairable. Make it easier for us to do the right thing. That's fascinating because actually producers currently underpin packaging recovery 10 to 15% of the overall value. The rest of it is being paid for by local government and therefore central government funding, or the public. Producers need to step up, and that's what the future of EPR is. And clearly, you know, more and more challenges coming for them to do more, which is why you've seen those headlines I showed you earlier with some of the big brands agreeing that they will set higher targets for recycled content, or they will simplify their products and their packaging. So, you know, asking the public, what does that mean to them? They were saying, well, make single-use items out of non-recyclable materials is insanity. Well, absolutely. But making single-use items full stop is insanity. So how do we create things that are more reusable or repairable or have a multiple lifetime? So there's a big drive now on those that put material into the UK market to reconsider the experience of the user. Can we put rather than a plastic straw, can we go with a bamboo straw? Maybe that's better for the environment because it degrades, but only if you put it in the right place. So my question would be, well, why haven't we got, you know, metal reusable straws that we take with us in our bag? Just like we've all started to carry refillable coffee cups and refillable drinking mugs, for example. So I think that the public have started to become much more keen on doing the right thing, and they actually want the information. I think this is fascinating. I sat down with DEFRA several months ago, and DEFRA told me that the public didn't want to know. It was too difficult to communicate this to the public. Well, I'm being told by the public, we need to know. I need to be able to go and see a red label or a green dot, and that makes it clearer for me that that's good and that's bad. Just like they would with their, you know, their daily intake for the dietary or the salt content or whatever it might be. So I think it's really interesting that we said to them, well, go on in, design a label that you'd be happy to go on any product on the market packaging. And they came up with the recycling loop. They came up with the OPRL loop, the second one. They came up with a tree or a footprint, which I quite liked. These weren't prompted. You know, this was punter saying that's the kind of thing I'd see and I'd know that green was good, high recycled content, yellow was okay, probably could do better, and red was, I really shouldn't be buying that. Now this was interesting because this got us thinking, you know, we need to make the whole system easier. So we ended up coming up with an idea that we've pitched to government more recently as they you know, think about their ongoing strategy and positioning. And we've said, well, why don't we color code so the consumer can buy correctly? Green is high recycled content, easy to recycle. Yellow it's got recycled content. It might be a bit harder to recycle. So the sandwich box being a multiple material, for example. And then you know, then you have the red. That's the hard to recycle. The cat food pouch is really difficult. The crisp packet is particularly difficult. So you can then make your choice about, should I be buying into green, or am I happy that my favorite brand is a red? I think that's a great opportunity. But the punters also said, well, make it really easy, because I don't know which box or bin to go. And I've just moved house and I now, you know, it's bags. Yeah, my mum lives in an area where it all goes in one box or one bin. So they like the idea of recycle by numbers. And we've been pitching this to government recently, this idea that, you know, every aluminium can would have a number 3 in a green recycle now loop. And ultimately what that says is to the consumer is it's highly recyclable, it's got good recycled content, and I put it in my number 3 container, whether that be a bin, a bag, or a box, depending on your local authority. And actually, having tested this with local authority officers in the last 3 months, they say the transition cost of doing this is negligible, whereas the transition cost of everybody going with the same coloured bin or box is probably going to bankrupt the UK. So this seems to be getting some really interesting resonance. And equally, the public, and there's an interesting, for my next speaker, you can work out where that picture is. Nice little segue there. But, you know, this idea of a deposit on bottles on the go has got a lot of positivity from the public. We did our own survey, and they were absolutely on board. This kind of make it easy, make it simple. We'd be happy to donate to charity. We don't necessarily need our 10p back. This is all about doing the right thing. So there's a lot of positivity out there. Just quickly, I want to tell you about some of the policy stuff that's happening in this space. You know, first and foremost, Europe are moving the benchmark. 35% recycled content in beverage bottles. And that's going to be in the next 2 to 3 years. Then the UK has decided to go with 30%, Philip Hammond in his budget statement, but that's still a significant improvement on where we are today. We've got plastic pacts. For those of you that don't know, do hashtag plastic pacts and you'll be inundated with information about this supply chain big brand agreement to do better, increase of plastic packaging that's easy to recycle and be reusable, increased recycled content, etc., reducing and eliminated single-use packaging. So there's a lot of real positivity happening across the supply chain. And then we've got all of the government policies that you're seeing. from litter to and marine to the 25-year environment plan, plus clean growth, industrial strategy, and the national infrastructure. What these are suggesting is that the world of tomorrow is significantly different. And when you've got high-level policy that's been signed off by the Prime Minister, avoidable waste and zero avoidable plastics, etc., then you know that the world is going to shift. Which is why back in May, Suez put together a manifesto of the things we'd like government to consider. It's available to download, the information's there, but this was our opportunity to go and work with the supply chain and say, in a new world, consumers, in a new world, producers, in a new world, waste managers, what might this look like? What are the things we need to address? And we looked at taxing virgin materials. Well, it looks like we're going to get that with the 30% recycled content requirement. We've talked about anything being put on the market must be technically or affordably recyclable. We think that's coming through EPR. So a lot of positivity there in some of the things that we asked for. And we scoped this out in terms of the overall economy. And the box to look at is the bottom middle, waste to resources. This was the sector that we control. The benefits in terms of carbon and jobs and infrastructure are significant. But we're talking massive potential gross value add to the UK economy. But when you look at that impact on secondary resources and on the manufacturing space and then retail ability to save and consumption decisions, there's about a 9 billion gross value added benefit by getting resource management right. That's not only plastics, but that's a big ask. And so we then started to create, because DEFRA was saying, well, what does EPR look like? We work all over the world. We work in a French system, a Swedish system. We work in a Norwegian system. We started to create what might an EPR system really need to deliver against: simplicity, driving sustainable design. We want packaging that is easy to recycle and is lightweighted as much as possible. But equally, we want it to enable innovation, and we want it to block the wrong type of materials coming in. So now we've got Gove, ideally before Christmas, I'm led to believe, coming out with his recycling resources and waste plan. And again, in there, you're going to see phasing out the avoidable plastic waste. You're going to see banning single-use plastics under consultation. So there's a real shift happening right now. This is the most interesting time I've ever had when it comes to a 25-year in resources and waste. So what's happening now? Things that you can think about. We're looking at the system differently. We're recognizing that there's a supply chain, whether it be plastics and polymers or it be paper and fiber. You need to understand how design works with material choice, how we get product alignment for simplicity. We then buy less of the wrong material. We have more of the easy to recycle PET and HDPE and less of the awkward stuff. That then means we can collect it, the logistics works, we get less loss from the system and contamination is reduced. This is the process system that DEFRA are now having to address. And that means working with BEIS, and it means working with MCLG and other government departments, because the future is about value chains. And the future is, these are just some of the interesting things that Suez have been involved in terms of, artificial intelligence on waste data. We're working on bugs that eat waste to produce a feedstock for farm animals. We're getting involved in TerraCycle model with those niche recycling products. Really fascinating time for the brands throughout the system to play together. And I think that is what's most positive, is the problem of plastics and other resources going to waste are now being solved by the markets talking to themselves and telling government what's needed, not government setting an unrealistic target and hoping it works. So in my summary, here we go. I think waste will be a thing of the past. I will not be a chartered waste manager in a decade's time. I will be a chartered resource manager as well as a chartered environmentalist. The age of materials and value chain partnerships is well on its way, buying services, not products. And that'll be interesting when it comes to that plastic bottle. In the future of EPR, I don't think Coca-Cola or Procter & Gamble will actually ever give up the ownership of the bottle. They will want it back because the targets will require it. They'll be paying a levy to put it on the UK market. That will change their dynamic with the product. And that's quite interesting, the product and the packaging. There's so much happening right now. If you're not ready to read all these consultation documents over Christmas, book some time off. Explain to the family that you want to do some, heavy duty consultation responses, because this is a once in a generation, I'm serious, once in a generation opportunity to get this right. But remember, plastics isn't evil. I started there and I'll finish there. And EPR is the next revolution. The harmonization of packaging, harmonization of collection systems, and hopefully we'll start to see political whim becoming less important in decision making in the color of your box and the frequency of your collection, because it'll become about the quality of the material and its ability to go back to an end market. And on that, I'd like to end, Chair.
Wow, that was a tour de force, Adam, and a fantastic set of slides that people can refer back to as well. So much in them, and your details are there. And I guess because you've done that in the public space, people can contact you Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, as you suggested, because you'll be working as well. But you jest, but actually it is quite a good time for doing those things that you can't get time for normally, isn't it? Well, thanks for stimulating stuff, and there's time for Q&A, as you know, after Martin has spoken. We have some questions coming in, but by no means too many, so please do fire away. There's no such thing as a stupid question. There really isn't. And if you feel you're amongst a huge number of experts on this webinar, actually this is about learning and development. And of course, we don't have the answers, otherwise this wouldn't be such a global problem. So let's chat through what your concerns are, and let's hear your ideas as well. But do fire your questions in, and we'll come to them at the end. So just drawing breath slightly, and I will introduce Martin Gettings. Martin is also a chartered environmentalist, and we keep mentioning chartered environmentalists. If people on this call aren't one, please do join the club. It's a fantastic place to be. Adam and I were discussing at the Society's Council earlier in the week the fact that in multidisciplinary organisations where you have different skills and different backgrounds, actually the chartered environmentalist qualification puts people together under one theme, one banner, one cause. And so it is a fantastic way of both feeling equal amongst others, but also with a common interest. So Martin's environmental status comes via IEMA, the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment, and for a day job he's head of sustainability at Canary Wharf Group. Martin will focus on plastics as he provides insight into the work that the Canary Wharf do to reduce their impact on the environment. I have a feeling that there will be some pretty good tips coming through for businesses from Martin's talk. No pressure, Martin. And as I say, we'll pop back to ask questions of both Adam and Martin at the end of Martin's talk. So with no further ado, over to Martin.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much, Dougal, for that introduction, and thank you, Adam, for that brilliant that brilliant first presentation. Thanks also to Society for the Environment for having me join this webinar this afternoon. My talk's going to probably take about 15 minutes. Dougal said, my name is Martin Gettings. I'm a chartered environmentalist and full member of the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment. Here at Canary Wharf, my role is Group Head of Sustainability. I've been working in the built environment for just over 30 years, and for the first 15 of which was on the operational side of the sector, delivering construction projects as a site engineer, site manager, and a project manager. And for the last 15, I've been full-time in environmental, starting initially with HSEQ systems, then going into environmental management, and the last 10 years full-time in sustainability corporate leadership. I've been here at Canary Wharf for just over 7 years, and here I'm responsible for our sustainability strategy and annual reporting. But I must stress that we're all responsible here for working together as a team to deliver our long-term sustainability goals. And at this juncture, I really do want to give a shout out for two individuals that have really sort of helped drive this, to Steve Grigg, who's our co-MD of Canary Wharf Management, and to Lugano Kakambwa, who's unfortunately leaving the business at the end of the year, but two guys there who've really helped drive our journey in this space. And I must also give a shout out to Veris Strategies, who are our sort of communications and engagement partner. Now, just pushing on with the presentation today, I'm really excited to be joining you to talk about our Breaking the Plastic Habit programme and how we're tackling single-use plastics here at Canary Wharf. Breaking the plastic habit is part of our wider Making Sustainability Real strategy. And of all the amazing pictures we had of sustainability here at Canary Wharf, I've chosen this one because I believe it kind of is the most important element of any sustainability campaign. Engaged people pledging to get involved and make a difference, because at the end of the day, sustainability really does start and finish with people taking action. And without that, sustainability is just a definition. Okay, so to explain our journey and set our Breaking the Plastic Habit program in context, I'm going to explain who we are. I just want to give you a bit of background as to who we are as a company and a business, what we're currently doing around single-use plastics, and where we're going and what's next for us and what we are learning. Okay, so before we go into the plastic story, I need to explain who we are. Our story started in the 1980s, and really it's a place where you've really got to imagine the vision and the innovation that was needed to take this derelict dockland from this to this. In just 30 years, we've created the Canary Wharf estate in its entirety. It's a 100-acre mini-city which now welcomes over 120,000 workers and nearly 50,000 visitors each day. So if we just pause for a moment and think of that, it really is our interaction with this population that shapes our sustainability agenda here at Canary Wharf. So we are Canary Wharf Group, a fully integrated cityscape developer, constructor, estate manager and landlord. And it gives us a unique opportunity to embed sustainability starting right from the beginning of the development process, through construction and throughout the life of our developments in use. To me, this image perfectly sums up what we do. We design, develop, construct and manage cityscapes. And it's this status that makes us very well placed to trial solutions and tackle problems that affect us all at a city level, on a global scale, but also at a personal level, like plastics. So what are we doing? Our sustainability strategy is called Making Sustainability Real, and that means we're aligning our corporate strategy with local and global sustainability agendas. But importantly, it's about involving people and taking meaningful, real action. And what we don't want it to be is just another corporate definition of what sustainability means to us. So let me explain our journey so far. Clearly, public consciousness is driving sustainability issues higher than ever, which is great. And it means that there's an increasing need for businesses to communicate their efforts to their stakeholders. We've always been heavily engaged with tenants here on the estate, and we feel that connecting with consumers is a natural extension of that. And so to do that, we host public events in our retail malls, like the ones on World Environment Day, focusing on how we can work together with our stakeholders to be more sustainable. We also use these events as an opportunity for stakeholders to give us their feedback on what's important to them. And we want this to be a two-way communication. It's so important to listen to our tenants, customers and visitors and include them in any campaigns we implement on the estate. We know we don't have all the answers, which is why we want to engage with our stakeholders as much as possible to understand how we can all do better. But we try to put the emphasis on having fun and getting people to want to be involved, because sustainability campaigns don't just have to be about rules and regulations. So before we turned our eye to plastics, we started on coffee. An estimated 17,000 disposable coffee cups are used and disposed of every day at Canary Wharf. So in 2017, we started our Wake Up and Smell the Coffee campaign. We created a clean coffee zone with the intention of tackling the problem of waste resulting from on-the-go hot drinks. We want to make it easy for people to, number one, stop relying on disposable coffee cups, and number two, make it easy for people to recycle their disposable coffee cups and plastic lids. We also wanted to do something about the used coffee grounds. So in February 2017, we established a number of interventions. We created obvious recycling points for disposable coffee cups and plastic lids across the estate, and we carried out a week-long engagement program aimed at both retailers and customers, making it easy to access reusable coffee cups. We also engaged with BioBean, a startup with the brilliant idea to make compressed fuel logs from coffee grounds and arranged to collect them from our retailers for recovery. And crucially, the retailers were already segregating these grounds, so arranging the collection was relatively straightforward. And the coffee logs produced actually burn 20% hotter and longer than traditional wood logs, and they have the added bonus of a milder coffee aroma when burned. So because at Canary Wharf we already sort and segregate our waste resources before we send them to be processed, it was kind of an easy extension to make the arrangements for the cups and lids. And of course, we had to make sure that the cups and lids are collected and sent to specialist recyclers, which we did. So since the launch of the campaign in 2017, we've recycled around 3 million coffee cups and over 200 tons of coffee grounds. So following on from the Wake Up and Smell the Coffee campaign, we held a 5-day public event in the retail malls on World Environment Day 2017. We asked retailers and customers across the estate to vote for the environmental issue they would most like to see tackled. Now, it was quite interesting. I mean, we talk about the Blue Planet moment, but actually the general public was aware of this even before Blue Planet was aired. I think the edition of Blue Planet, which focused on plastics, I think aired in the December of this year, but obviously in the June, of the 900 people that took part, single-use plastics already was receiving 46% of the votes. So it was clear that the feedback from our stakeholders, formed the basis of our next major campaign, Breaking the Plastic Habit. So Breaking the Plastic Habit is a 12-month program launched in response to this growing single-use plastic problem facing all of us. I don't need to quote the statistics. We consume nearly 5 million tons of plastic every year in the UK alone. And breaking the plastic habit is not about removing all plastic from the estate, but of course targeting the specific avoidable single-use plastic items and influencing positive behaviour change among our employees, tenants and visitors. We want to challenge that throwaway culture by encouraging people to rethink their usage, and collectively we will break the habit. But as I've said, it's not about banning plastic, it's about enabling us all to be more responsible with regards to plastic, especially the single-use plastics. So by educating consumers and providing easier and better reuse and recycling options, we want to eliminate the confusion around single-use plastics, around the recycling, such as the water bottles and straws. So this led us to lots of ongoing innovation and initiatives. And like Adam's already shown in his deck, the UK's first public-facing deposit return scheme, which we launched in April this year. And the machine uses a 360-degree scanning system to identify, segregate, collect, and process bottles for recycling. And to date, we've seen more than 10,000 bottles that have been collected through this unit alone on the estate. And then there was also the hashtag 3 Weeks initiative, which again part of the programme, aimed at reducing the problem of single-use plastic straws in bars and restaurants on the estate. Now, according to behavioural research, it takes 3 weeks to break a habit. So we set our first campaign to prove that we can move away from plastic straws by providing options and support and encouragement over this 3-week period. And as a result of that, 85% of the bars, restaurants and cafes on the estate pledged their support to ditch straws. And after that initial 3 weeks, we've succeeded in reducing something like 72,000 straws. Nearly all of the retailers who participated are prepared to support a permanent switch away from plastic straws, and we're working with the remaining businesses to support them switching to sustainable alternatives. We want people to have easy access to solutions we implement, solutions based on findings from our audits and engagement. So to help people, we have easy access to free drinking water. We installed 7 refill stations around the estate, giving people access to water on the go across the malls. We want using refillable water bottles to become the norm in our community at Canary Wharf, and it's really cool to be able to see how many refills have been made. Since June, we've seen over 29,000 refills using the machines, so we're well on track to achieve our target of eliminating 100,000 plastic bottles per year through the use of our refill stations. In May 2018, we carried out an audit on the estate, taking responses from tenants and consumers to discover the areas that we want to target and better understand next, so we can understand the barriers that we have to reducing plastic use and improving recycling. The responses identified the most used items across the estate and identified key areas of concern, such as confusion around which plastics can and cannot be recycled. So the results from the estate-wide plastic audit were published in our report, How Do You Solve a Problem Like Plastic? Lessons from a Micro City. In it, we talk about our findings from the audit, what items were identified as being the most problematic, and how we can work with consumers to improve education and access to reuse and recycling options. The report identified the following areas to be considered to tackle plastics at Canary Wharf: educate and segregate, inform people and make it easy to keep resources segregated; food on the go. Clearly, takeaway packaging is a growing problem. Leadership, but this is an interesting one. not necessarily leadership from the top, but leadership and crucially from the shop floor is important to empower teams and include them in the mission. Consumers, certainly ahead of the game, they're absolutely informed and want to get involved. Access is absolutely vital to recycling infrastructure. It's key for on-the-go recycling. And momentum must be maintained. Clearly, we want to capture this energy and drive it forward as we still have much to do. All of this can be accessed on our website and other reports, breakingtheplastichabit.co.uk. It won't be a surprise to see which items to tackle that the audit revealed: straws, bottles, carrier bags, plastic food service items, and single-use coffee cups. So we're developing targeted campaigns, such as the #3weeks campaign, to tackle these specific plastic items on the estate. Each of these targeted campaigns will help us work towards Surfers Against Sewage's plastic-free community status, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So the headline progress to date, we've made some exciting progress in getting rid of unnecessary single-use plastics. You know, some of the headline figures there: over 3 million coffee cups and 200 tonnes of coffee grounds recycled. 83 retailers permanently banned plastic straws, which will improve an estimated 1.2 million straws per year. Our 7 refill stations have been used over 29,000 times. 10,000 bottles have been recovered using the deposit return scheme. There's no single-use plastic bottles, cups or straws in any Canary Wharf Group offices. But the best part is that we've opened up the communication channels. People want to engage with us, not just on plastic, but on other important sustainability topics. So what have we learned so far and where are we going? We are excited about our progress, but clearly we have a lot to do. These final few slides will summarise what we've learned and where we're going. Okay, I can't stress enough the power of partnerships. Breaking the Plastic Habit is not a short-term programme, and we want to build a legacy that will foster a culture of change. So we decided we would commit to gaining plastic-free community status and accreditation from marine conservation charity Surfers Against Sewage. To achieve this, we have incorporated their 5 key working areas to deliver specific plastic reduction targets within our programme. So governance, local business support, community engagement, community events and stakeholder working groups. So these elements are all a natural fit to the way we do our business and engage at Canary Wharf. So in achieving this, we will be the first commercial centre to do so. And like us, Surfers Against Sewage believe it's not about removing all plastic from our lives. You know, picking up what Adam said, plastic isn't evil. You know, it's an essential part of our modern way of life. But it's absolutely about kicking our addiction to this avoidable single-use plastic and crucially trying to change the system that produces it. So Surfers Against Sewage plastic-free community accreditation shares the same objectives as Breaking the Plastic Habit, which is why we're absolutely committed to incorporating their criteria and becoming the first commercial centre to do this. And it's having that partnership with another organisation that drives us to do that. So the second key element in this is cross-sector collaboration. Now, if anyone asked us what a route to a circular economy looked like, I would say it looks like that image on the slide there now. On the 5th of June 2018, that was the last World Environment Day, we hosted a cross-sector panel debate to engage and discuss the plastic pollution conversation for World Environment Day. Panellists represented a range of different industries, including retail, food preparation, manufacturing, packaging, and media. So not the usual suspects that a built environment developer like ourselves would engage with. And this is what we have to do. We have to engage beyond our sectors. So this event aimed at debunking the myths, rewriting the debate, and influencing change in the use of plastics through collaboration and action. The purpose was to kickstart a conversation and act as a catalyst for ongoing and open collaboration around this common problem and shared agenda. Over 80 people attended to take part, which included a roundtable debate session. We identified 3 key outcomes during the debate, which were collaboration, simplification, and education. The event focused on how we as a micro-city can influence and drive impactful change to create a model that other commercial centres, businesses and communities can follow globally as we work towards a circular economy. Following the event, we published Panel Debate, From Conversation Comes Action, a report summarising the outcomes of the debate. This can be downloaded from our website also. But for me, the key learning was a reinforcement of the fact that if we want to make a real difference, drive systemic change and move towards a circular society, we must engage and collaborate, not only within, but beyond our chosen sectors. You know, global problems such as plastics just simply can't be tackled unilaterally. which was why it was great on World Environment Day that we were also delighted to be partnering with the people you see on the screen there. So IEMA, Wilmot Dixon, Skanska, Siemens, Rolls-Royce, Less Plastic, and of course Society for the Environment. We all teamed up in an ongoing initiative to provide free resources to enable as many people as possible to pledge less plastic. So again, please do check out this World Environment Day page on the IEMA website, crammed with free resources for you to establish your own engaging campaigns to encourage people to pledge less plastic. It's also really good back at Canary Wharf to see that our efforts are starting to embed. Last week we opened Wharf Kitchen, a collection of street food vendors, all targeting zero plastic in their operations. By January, all vendors in Wharf Kitchen will be 100% plastic free. You know, and for us to know that the plastic free elements of all these startups, for us to create that level of engagement is really exciting, because it shows that what we're doing just goes beyond having campaigns and initiatives. It's becoming embedded not just in our day-to-day business operations, but it's being embedded in those day-to-day operations of our tenants. So we've enabled an environment that encourages others to get involved. So what does a plastic-free community look like? Well, it will look like ours, hopefully. Through all of our efforts, our partnerships and collaborations, we're working with Surface Against Sewage and others to achieve plastic-free community status. Now, clearly, it's not about banning plastic. What we're trying to accomplish is to get rid of that unnecessary throwaway stuff. It's really about being a responsible single-use plastic community and helping others to come along on this journey also. So that's the culture that we're trying to embed across our estate, but we can't do it without the most vital ingredients: partnerships, collaboration, and people. So that's basically where we are with our plastic journey. I look forward to answering some of your questions and perhaps collaborating on how we can all strive to break the plastic habit. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Martin. Inspirational talk, and we've had a question saying exactly that, or a comment saying exactly that. Inspirational presentation, so thank you very much. Okay, so it's time for Q&A. You can punch them into the webinar platform and we'll answer what we can. But as you've just seen from Martin, you've got contact information for both of them. So I've got a question that's come through before the webinar, which I'm going to ask of Martin, and it's from someone who says they've got their own cafes and various facilities in an out of town site, as well as 2,500 employees plus. What's the first thing you would suggest we do to reduce our plastic waste if we were to start our reduction plan from scratch? Martin.
Okay, great question. I guess that you've kind of got to know what your major sort of plastic elements are first. You know, understand what the single-use plastic streams are, identify those, and then come up with a plan. But in doing that, don't just sit and do it on your own. You know, do it in conjunction with your suppliers, with your customers, you know, with your staff and your teams. It's number one, identify. Number two, come up with a plan, and number three, just take action. I mean, it really is as simple as that. I mean, in terms of the straws, we did a thing where we it was about it, because clearly just saying don't use straws, it's you know, you've got to provide alternatives. So we had a range of options. You know, we had the paper straws, we've had the metal straws. Actually, getting people to come away from having straws in the drinks is you know, is obviously the best thing. So it's just tapping into behaviours and tapping into, you know, different ways of doing things.
Excellent. Yes. Give something somebody can do, like a straw, and then perhaps the other more difficult things follow. Martin, do you also have any examples of reducing single-use plastic in construction projects through the supply chain and packaging, etc.? And I might come to Adam on that one as well, but Martin, if you go first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, clearly we've been trying to address packaging and plastics in construction for many a year. One of the things that really stands out is we effectively, when we're delivering these projects, the construction period can be up to a number of years, and clearly we have to protect the works in use. So we use a lot of plastic sheeting and plastic coverings, not just when the materials are being delivered, but on the finished works. They have to be protected, from the operations on site. And we work very closely with a company called Protech, who have created a closed loop system for all of that on-site protection. So what we do is we're getting to the stage now where we don't buy protection materials off people. We buy a protection service, and we never, the actual materials never become part of our ownership. We buy a protection service off these providers who will come and protect the elements on site, but they will then take away that plastic protection because they see that as a valuable resource which could be reprocessed and repurposed and reused again. So we've effectively eliminated that single-use wrapping that we would bring on the site. And I mean, this is absolutely, it's a massive amount of plastics that comes on the site that is now simply avoided from going in the waste stream because it's seen as a resource which is going to be taken away and reused again.
I can't help but take the opportunity here as with my Grown in Britain hat on to talk up the place of the wonderfully sustainable material that is wood in construction. But anyone listening who knows me knows that I would be wrong of me to miss that opportunity. Do get in touch with me at Grown in Britain if you want to talk any further about replacing plastic in construction. Just another question for you, Martin. There's a statement saying that Canary Wharf is clearly well-resourced, the campaign's well-resourced and successful. But is there any sort of financial drivers that could be used by organisations perhaps that are less well-resourced? Are you aware of any financial drivers that might work there?
Don't be fooled. We don't have limitless resources to run these campaigns. We do have to negotiate and budget. But I think that if we can find ways to incentivise waste minimisation, obviously there's a great cost saving to be had there. But I think what we have to do is think about these programs in terms of alignment. If we're going to do a waste minimisation program, why can't we use that as a PR piece as well? Why can't we use that to communicate, the great stuff and use it to add value to the brand? And once we start taking the conversation, out of the sustainability team and out of the waste management team and across, generating a bit of interest wider across the business, suddenly we can find more innovative ways to fund these things. It almost becomes like a business imperative rather than something that we have to do to meet with legislation. And that's often a useful way to find funds to implement these programs.
Okay, thank you. And like I said before, details of the speakers' contacts are there, so you can, if you feel your question's not fully answered, and that wasn't a reflection on your answer there, Martin, but just thinking there may be more behind what you're saying, people can get in touch. I'm going to hand over to Adam to pick up 2 or 3 of the other questions, things like around Tetra Pak and where to get public consultations and a few other things.
Thanks very much. And I'll try and do this as quick as possible, given the time. So first and foremost, we've got one about labelling for biopolymers. Absolutely agree. Well done for that question. I think any future labelling scheme not only needs to identify whether something is recyclable or has inherently high recycled content to make it easy for the public, but if it is going to be a biopolymer, then we need a very clear C or a D or something on it to say it's compostable and therefore would go in bin 7, which would be your garden waste bin or your residual waste bin, or is it digestible and is therefore a D, for example, and would go in with your food waste. So totally agree. Biopolymers, it's all about the communication, but let's try and keep it simple for the public. We had a quick comment about EPR being an unfortunate acronym. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I think EPR doesn't predate the environmental permitting regulations, so some of us are going to have to live with both. But yeah, acronym soup is very much the name of the game. Somebody's asked, where do we keep an eye out for the public consultations? Well, it's a simple one, really. Get yourself registered on the DEFRA website, and then you'll be inundated with email traffic about consultations that you wish you'd never heard about. These ones are all due out, and if hot off the press, I would suggest the week beginning the 17th of December is when we should be looking. Alternative, I can't imagine Gove won't have a big splash in the Mail and certain other national newspapers. So just scan the press. Week beginning that week before Christmas, I think there'll be a lot of attention on this, because in Brexit terms, this might all be very good news for the UK as opposed to Brexit bad news. So that's the advice from me. And if there was one other message, I would. Oh, so many plastic. Okay, yeah, I think security at airports is fascinating. That's a really good question. We had a couple of airports at one of the workshops we ran when we were exploring EPR, and that ability to, how do we capture that material? Well, the bins are there. The question is, how do you get the logistics of an airport to work so that material actually gets recycled? So it's really interesting, this taking a refillable through an airport as opposed to taking a plastic bottle through an airport. Difficult. Ultimately, what I do now is I finish my coffee in my refillable mug before I go through customs, and then when I get the other side, I go to Costa or Starbucks. Other brands exist, and I get my refillable mug refilled, and I'm ready for my 2-hour wait or whatever it might be. So I think we have to adapt and adopt. So that's probably it from me. Back to Dougal.
Well, thanks everybody. We've had a good hour and a bit, and it's been fascinating stuff and inspirational in many ways, and also a huge opportunity to engage further, and that's very much what you should do if you want to. Details again, contact details are there. So if you're interested to hear more about chartered environmentalists or registering as an environmental technician, please take a look at how to become and why become webinars on the SOCENV website. You also find the recordings of parts 1 and 2 of this series on there too. This is the third one, and I can recommend the others to. Fantastic speakers and discussions. They're available on the SOCENV YouTube channel as well, so do feel free to share with colleagues and with networks. So the upcoming series for 2019, our plans include innovations, the good, the bad, and the game-changing, and sustainable built environment, and we're identifying speakers at the moment. So if you like the idea of joining the alumni, that is Adam and Martin from today, do nominate yourself, or indeed you can also nominate someone else, of course, although perhaps you should let them know at the same time as letting Phil know. Finally, just a nod towards World Environment Day next year, 5th of June, where SOCENV again will be working with all of our constituent bodies and also taking a lead. We'll be running a day of events on the 4th, the day before, so that the 5th is free for others to do their thing. And so look out and mark your diary for the 4th of June next year, which will be at Kew Gardens, the event. And I'm working with Phil on developing that. And again, we're looking for suitable speakers to go with the theme for World Environment Day next year, which is, we don't know yet, because the United Nations haven't decided. If you hear what the theme is for World Environment Day before we do, which is entirely possible, do let us know, because we obviously want to try and plan our themes around that. Phil and I are mulling over things like net gain, which we perhaps feel might be something that's still very much on the agenda, as it's only been, the consultation on net gain only came out this week. So that I personally would like to have that on the agenda, but there's room for other things, and let's see what the theme is from the UN. So finally, it's goodbye from them, and it's goodbye from me, and thank you for listening and taking part, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thank you.